with you. Flip a dotin in the bed, I'm reading manga till it's two. Tell me that you love a sip, I go, I'm knowing that it's true. Cause you acting all moe and vanilla in my view. So this is for them waifus, straight 2D flex in my life, fool. If you fuck with him, tell you my dude. Let the beat right out, keep it nice and smooth, yo.
Hey everyone, welcome to the weeabooze, the monthly podcast where we get drunk and talk about anime. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hunter.
I'm Sam.
There you go.
I got it that time. What are we drinking tonight, Hunter?
We are drinking the Best Brown Ale by Bell's in Comstock. I believe that's Missouri. MI is Missouri, right?
Yep.
Yeah. It's significantly better. We had this like cucumber habanero. Yeah, it was like you take all things that sound good alone and then mash them together where it doesn't sound good anymore.
Not good.
Yeah, it was bad.
All right. Do you have anything to talk about? Any catching up to do, or do you want to just jump into the topic of tonight?
I'm just checking out her sword.
Is that a euphemism of some sort?
No, she's got a sword.
All right.
She's holding a sword. That's true.
Let's just do it. So,
Hey, what's your phone case? Is that new?
it's an Evangelion phone case.
You didn't have a phone case before,
When's the
did
fourth
you?
movie coming out, Kyle?
Never. Well,
Tell the people.
it's in the works. I'm working on it. I'm sorry. Soon, hopefully. We'll see. Never. All right. Although everyone has their own unique anime origin story, we all share the same experience of coming across that one anime that enraptured us. Bleach, Samurai Champloo, and Eureka 7 were some of the first anime I ever watched, and while they all had a tremendous impact on me, nothing shook my 13-year-old self to the core like Fooly Cooly. For the first time in my life, I understood what it meant for a work to speak to you, and I wanted more. I sought out anime that thematically resembled Fooly Cooly in any shape or form. Paranoia Agent, Serial Experiments Lane, Ergo Proxy, Textualize, Utena, NHK, Evangelion, all the Satoshi Kon films. I couldn't get enough of these anime that were actively changing the way I thought. The shared thread between all these works appeared to be intrigue, stemming from the use of psychological or philosophical concepts. However, there were plenty of anime I had come across in between watching those series that were devoid of psychological elements, yet captivated me just the same. It turns out what I was actually searching for wasn't psychological anime, but a feeling. That same feeling I had when I watched Fooly Cooly for the first time. A feeling that, when surfaces, leads me to ask myself, why am I enjoying this particular anime so much? Many of us continue to watch...
That's a drink.
That's a drink? Oh.
That's definitely a drink, dude.
For those of you who don't know, just in case, we drink to booty pics that flash by on my screensaver. So,
Well, this isn't really a booty pic.
risque anime pictures. Many of us continue to watch anime so we can experience that emotional high of witnessing a truly good story. We'll sit through 11 episodes of poorly written dialogue and shoddy characterization to witness our protagonist finally unleash their true power, hold hands with their love interest, or uncover the mystery in order to briefly satisfy that sensation we've been chasing. This has led us to become content with mediocrity. Mediocre anime, in my opinion, is significantly worse than anime regarded as bad. Bad anime doesn't saturate the seasonal anime charts. Bad anime at least gives us something to laugh about and elicits conversation. The worst thing an anime can do is nothing. If you finish watching a movie or a series and have nothing to say about it, or have no emotional connection to it, what was the point? Simply consuming show after show with a vacant expression on your face claiming it to be just okay, 7 out of 10, or even worse, convincing yourself it was actually good, is a sad way I see too many anime fans, myself included, engage in the medium. Generally speaking, what do you think makes an anime mediocre? What's the quality that differentiates mediocre anime from the good and the bad? Do you think we've lowered our standards over time, or do you think people have just grown older and more cynical?
You kind of like talk down about like mediocre. I don't think it's like, you said, what's the point? I think that there's a point to it. Sometimes you just want to, sit back and not really, like, you want to multitask. I don't know if you do this, but like, I'll watch a show, but I'll also like play on my computer at the same time. And if it's something like deep and intriguing, I don't want to like miss it, right? But if it's something just like in the background, like a slice of life, like something, I'm going to use the word again, comfy, like a comfy anime.
Right.
You can like not pay attention to 100% of the time. There's a place for that.
I sort of disagree, but
Oh, wow.
I think I disagree only due to terminology, because mediocre doesn't exactly mean just a comfy show. I think comfy shows can be great and terrible.
Okay, I guess it's a definition
Okay.
difference.
The way you're using mediocre,
Mm-hmm.
are you specifically talking about this show clearly tried to portray this idea? They just did it poorly. Like, they did not accomplish what they set out to do when making the anime. Whereas there can be an anime that's about nothing and nothing happens, and as long as that's what it was intended for, then it's a great show about nothing.
Well, right now we're trying to find out what is that quality. What is the thing that makes something mediocre? That is that.
Saying it's kind of latching onto it, yeah.
It has nothing to offer.
It has nothing to offer.
It has
okay.
nothing to offer to the genre and for the purpose that it is being created.
Okay, and like I said earlier, like that is not synonymous with it being bad. Mediocre is in the middle, you know. Mediocre is, like I mentioned, is far worse than something that's truly bad.
Yeah, it's not notable. It has nothing to offer in any way.
All right, well then I'll continue with what I think, and you can kind of stem off of that. So I would say the determining quality is superficiality. When a character's dialogue or actions are not a result of logic or a sincere characterization, but of preconceived notions. A mediocre story will follow certain beats because we expect them to. The girl and the guy will get together, the tsundere will call the protagonist a baka, and the protagonist will get a nosebleed as he walks in on a girl taking a bath who will react by screaming and calling him a pervert. It doesn't matter if these...
What we live for.
I know, but it doesn't matter if these actions suit the character or if these events make sense in context to the plot. Other anime did these things, therefore people must like them, and they should happen. Mediocre anime has a story structure built on pre-existing concepts which are presented in the form of cliches and stereotypes. This occurs to such a degree that tropes themselves have become tropes. At one point, it was sort of funny for the archetype of a god or a deity to be presented as a lazy or incompetent person. But after watching Noragami, Renai Bokun, Smartphone,
Talk
Danmachi,
shit about Noragami.
No Game No Life, and Konosuba, to name a few, trust me, there are more. I feel like it would be more original to present a god character in a totally normal and stereotypical, all-powerful way. Mediocre anime are nothing more than a clever collection of cliches that take advantage of the fact that their audience has watched anime before. A main character can quietly sit in the back corner seat of the classroom next to the window, or break the fourth wall and call attention to the fact that he's sitting in the back corner seat of the classroom next to the window. And either situation will be funny because it's a thing we've seen before. Mediocre anime attempts to use cliches as a substitute for characterization, but fail to realize a character composed of tropes is reverting them to an archetype.
To sum it up, you're saying that a mediocre anime is a bad copy of something that was previously
Yes.
well known.
Don't know, or I don't think I've disagreed with you more before than right now.
What?
Also, real quick, were you talking shit about Konosuba?
No.
'Cause I'll fight you.
No, I love Konosuba as much as anyone else, you know?
I might be misunderstanding what you are saying, so
Okay.
correct me if I'm wrong.
I will.
But it sounds like you are insinuating that story structure is almost the defining characteristic of what makes a mediocre anime mediocre. And I think story structure does not matter in an anime. It matters how well it's executed. Because no matter what you look at, what you're talking about is not mediocrity, you're talking about originality. And if you really break it down, originality, nothing's original anymore. Everything's a retell or of retelling of some sort of archetype that has existed since fucking Plato days. It's not whether or not you're doing a retelling, it's whether or not you're doing it justice and you're doing it well.
Well, most retellings that do something well are doing something a little bit different. They'll do their own spin on it. Because if it was just the same story again, then yeah.
Did you like Lion King?
Yeah,
Lion King is an exact copy of Hamlet, but with lions.
Yeah.
But there's a different take on it. I think that Disney specifically, yeah, they take stories that are popular from, old times and they put their own spin on them.
Because they execute it very well. It's about execution to me. And I think labeling any unoriginal show as mediocre isn't fair, because with the mass amount of anime that they are, you're going to get repeats of a lot of things. Some will be mediocre, some won't be. And the best example I can give off the top of my head with my limited pool of watching things, Sword Art Online. Less than mediocre, terrible. Log Horizon, incredibly similar, but pretty good. Mm-hmm. And those are almost retellings. I mean, I'm not saying they're the same show. Please don't fucking quote me saying they're the same show. But the premise, the idea, the story structure, incredibly similar. But one is clearly executed better than the other.
Right. And I mean, I do agree with you. I mean, I'm kind of having a hard time understanding where we are, being separated. Because you mentioned story structure. I feel like story structure is the all-encompassing terminology we use to define how an anime is presented to us, whether it be original or, just a composition of cliches.
You were saying like basically a copy, something that doesn't, something that's just built off of previous tropes, or like let's say after Madoka Magica comes out, just because that's on the screen right now, you make a magical girl anime, but you don't make your characters, you don't try to make them any more interesting. You try to make like carbon copies of Madoka, right? Or you make copies and everything comes off as lazy or unoriginal.
Right.
That creates a mediocre anime, but you can have mediocrity without going down that path.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I think as we go a little bit further, I think what I have to say will become a little bit more clear.
Okay.
Only because, I have an answer to how we combat superficiality, how we combat these cliches and tropes, because it's not that I hate cliches and tropes. I can enjoy them when they're done well, when they're done with meaning, when they're purposeful. And I hate to say that because, when something is purposeful and when something is meaningful, that's when we enjoy it. But how do we understand when it is or is not?
I don't know about the word purposeful, because usually it's like, are you talking about like serves a purpose or done on purpose?
Serves a purpose.
Okay. Never mind.
So with that being said,
all of them are done on purpose.
But what does all of this mean? How does being aware of the fact, if you agree, that superficiality makes an anime mediocre benefit us in any way? I often find myself watching an anime struggling to put my finger on the reasoning behind why I'm enjoying it. Keep in mind, I'm not searching for the obvious difference between mediocrity and true cinematic excellence. I'm looking for the subtle difference that can help distinguish the few good anime in a season filled with below-average series. My answer, the very literal opposite of superficiality, is depth. Initially, depth seems like too profound of a term to be used to combat your everyday anime, but I think that's due to how the term is almost always associated with shows that are psychological or philosophical. That, this is what I was all referencing earlier when I was talking about Fooly Cooly. All psychological anime are deep, but not all anime considered deep are psychological. This ideology is something I failed to grasp over a year ago on the podcast when we answered this question from a listener who asked us, does an anime need to be deep to be good? And I answered, no. Thinking about that question now, I completely disagree with my previous outlook. Although the concept of good may be relative, I'm sort of embarrassed by the argument I made. Regardless, it makes me happy to know, my opinions are growing and changing along with my ability to vocalize them. I think any anime that is interpreted as good by a respectably sized population, whether it be the anime community as a whole or a niche group of fans, manifests a particular level of depth. When something is deep, it means there is an underlying meaning to what's being said or done. It's a quality that requires active thought, but doesn't need to be terribly complex. Depth revolves around presenting universally accepted themes in a captivating, unique, and profound way. Deep anime are about humanizing characters. For example, Wolfwood from Trigun carries around this giant cross that he uses as a weapon. Without spoiling a 20-year-old anime too much, the cross is actually foreshadowing Wolfwood as a Christ figure. On the other hand, one of the vampire hunters from Kizumonogatari, who I can't even remember the name of, also carries around a giant cross because that's apparently a weapon vampire hunters fight with, and it looks cool.
It was pretty cool.
Depth is an aspect that separates a show like Madoka from Magical Girl Rising Project or K-On! from Sora no Oto. Looking at examples of anime that try to do the same thing is a helpful way to understand why some tropes, cliches, or even certain aesthetic decisions work or don't. So thoughts on depth as a subtle distinguishing quality between mediocre and good anime.
Well, first of all, I don't want to I wouldn't knock you too much on using the term depth, because I still, to some degree, believe maybe not the actual definition, but at least the accepted definition of being deep in some sort of media usually pertains to some sort of psychological story. When most people think of something that is deep, it's thought-provoking, and that's usually associated with psychological. So when you say something like K-On! Is deep, I think when you look at the actual definition of it just has the characters can be deep by having a lot about them, but not necessarily being mind-bending, or you have to give it, it makes you rethink your life kind of deep.
Right.
I agreed with most of what you just said, but I think you didn't blatantly contradict the first thing you said, but I do think the second part of what you just said kind of disagrees with your initial statements.
Okay.
And I'm going to use Noragami as an example because you bashed it, and that shows
I didn't
fucking great.
bash it,
Yes,
and
a
it's
bash
not. But
Konosuba.
I didn't bash these things. I use them as examples that have a mediocre quality to them. My example was a lot of anime use god characters as this, lackadaisical, oh, I'm bored, I'm bad at doing my job as a god. And that's a trope that's done over and over and over.
Have you heard the song Mediocre by T.I.?
No, go on.
I'll play it at the end of this.
Okay, just say whatever you want to.
Right.
Say what you need to say.
So, specific to Noragami, tell me why you feel Noragami was mediocre. And I know we're talking about one anime specific, but this is just going to be a broad sense of why I think you might be applying the term mediocre to a lot of anime that maybe aren't.
Noragami never took this big defining step. It's lost in the sea of so many anime because I have no attachment to anything that it did. It did not speak to me, and I know there is a personal aspect to what people consider to be deep, but honestly, as someone who's watched a lot of anime, I can continue to pull these threads from a show saying, I've seen this before here, I've seen this before there, I've seen this before over here, from all these different anime. And Noragami, in addition to many other mediocre anime, feel like nothing more than a collection of ideas that I've watched 1,000 times before. And maybe that's not the case to you.
For something to be deep or have depth, we just brought up relativity, right? Where you can be, if we're talking about depth is an ocean. If you're 1 foot deep, you're not as deep as 1,000 feet underwater. But we were saying, it's relative to smaller things, right? So if you're talking depth, I think there is depth to be found in a lot of the anime that you're talking about. Specifically, we were talking about Noragami. But because it's not as deep as maybe some of the other shows that you mentioned before, like Paranoia Agent, right? Super psychological, Ergo Proxy, super deep, right? Even though it's not as deep, you're suddenly saying, all right, that means there is no depth. Where I think that's very unjustified, because in Origami, the reason why I liked it was because I thought the depth that was there was subtle, and it was found in the characters. Even if the story itself was pretty superficial and seen 1,000 times, I found depth in the characters. I found depth in their relationships, and I think that's one of the reasons why I always harp on character development, is because that's where I find depth. And I think maybe you're looking for depth in the wrong places and comparing it to some sort of relativity that you set for yourself a long time ago when you watched some of the most psychological anime ever created.
Right. Okay. I get what you're saying. And I think we're approaching a mentality I wanted to avoid. And it's only due to my lack of knowledge. Roland's Death of the Author essay, and how we derive our own personal depth from an anime in this case. I think, for the sake of the discussion, we should talk about depth intended by the creator, not our own interpretation, especially considering the fact that we have one more potentially controversial concept to talk about. I've been playing with the idea of for a podcast topic involving what certain anime mean to us and how they impacted our lives personally. So maybe we'll come back to that. But the death of the author, is an essay essentially about how once a work is out of the creator's hands, they no longer have any merit to define what the anime means to anyone else. It's
like
our
the English
collective
teacher rule.
Basically,
That's why some artists actually never release what a certain song is about.
or a title of a piece of artwork.
Yeah. Sayori.
Sayuri.
Oh, got it. So we are talking about a potentially, ironically, incredibly deep topic, on the concept of depth and what we derive meaning from.
Maybe the opposite of irony. It's expected.
Coincidental. That's something we all need to bear in mind when talking about this is I'm trying to pull depth from the creator's intent, not our personal interpretation. I don't know if the creator of Noragami, truly intended, these subtle differences that you're finding in these characterizations, of each individual. Or is that just something you're noticing because you've seen fewer anime?
I mean, without being able to talk to the creator,
We don't know.
the director. I mean, besides having our own interpretations, how are we supposed to objectively measure the depth of a show?
Exactly, and again, you kind of mentioned maybe it's because I haven't seen that many anime, and I agree with you to an extent. Obviously, the array of anime I've seen is nowhere near yours, but again, I don't think we should be measuring depth relatively.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems again with
But you
exactly what you
just
said,
were, right?
Huh?
You were just measuring depth relatively.
No.
You were measuring it relative to you.
I'm talking about measuring depth relative to other anime that are also deep, because I'm saying depth
relative
can be
to one another, not relative
Exactly.
to your own interpretation. of it.
Exactly,
Okay.
because the whole point is that you can find depth in a lot of different things, and you just said that if maybe I find it deep because I haven't seen other anime, but even if I had seen anime, that doesn't change how deep a certain idea is.
So actually, okay, this is something I wanted to bring up. I didn't want to derail you, but previously mentioned that you answered a question that said, like, does an anime have to be deep to be good? And you didn't like your answer. So I would like to give you the chance to re-answer that question, because I feel like you've changed it, but now I don't agree with your answer.
Well, no, that's the point we're making right now, and I already answered it, and I said, no, like an anime, I think an anime does have to have a level of depth to be good. I mean, I may be inferring, but I think what we're going to be talking about next is where you will shine. I just want to reiterate really quickly, we're trying to find out the differentiating factor between mediocre and acceptable. A question that's bound to arise here is, what about fun? What about all those dumb fanservice anime that give me a lifetime's worth of happiness over the course of 12 episodes? I don't want to think. I want to watch these cute girls do cute things. If I'm having fun, what does it matter? The criticism of fun is a legitimately important factor that tends to get overlooked when evaluating anime. While most of these shows fall under the category of guilty pleasures being shows that are enjoyed despite their literary flaws as they appeal to the visceral factors such as sex and violence, there are some that contain a certain level of depth. I believe that creating something truly fun requires an equal amount of work as creating something considered deep. In other words, anime that are fun can elicit the same amount of active thought and engagement as anime with depth. If fun was something easy to achieve and replicate, every fun anime, movie, and video game would all be equally enjoyable. It's not the best example, but Shimoneta and Satakai Yaku Indomo both thrive on dirty jokes, but one weaves a narrative out of the jokes, while the other is nothing more than a collection of gags. There's a difference between finding something truly enjoyable and simply being entertained. There's a difference between eating Kraft macaroni and cheese and homemade macaroni and cheese. They're the same
I feel
meal.
like that's an unfair comparison, man.
It shouldn't be. Okay, a Big Mac and a hamburger.
I'm saying now you're talking about objective differences where previously the two anime combined, someone could legitimately like the other one better. And it's not because it's objectively better or worse.
And I think this is where your entire stance falls off the rails, oddly enough, or not even oddly enough, funnily enough for me, because that goes back to my previous statement that structure does not determine mediocrity, execution does. Because a fun anime can be executed really well, and that's ultimately what it comes down to. Because if an anime is made to be fun and entertaining, and it succeeds in being fun and entertaining,
Yeah, it's set
then
out
it is
to
not a
end.
mediocre show. It set a goal for itself, and it attained it. And I don't want to, go off of the topic of anime, but just because I think it's a strong example or representation of what I mean. If we look at music, which is just another form of expression as is anime, or a form of media as is anime, I know they're, whatever.
A little different, yeah.
Song A or song 1 might have the exact same song structure as song 2. They might both be A, B, C rhyme scheme with verse, chorus, bridge, and so on, right? But one song could be blatantly better than the other one because the other artist sucks at making music. You know what I'm saying? And in that case, structure has nothing to do with it.
In my drunken state, maybe I'm failing to understand, but I still don't see a disagreement between the two of us. Because I agree, you mentioned something, and I hope I get this right. I wanted to stop you earlier, but I just let you keep going, which is, an anime that sets out to do something fun and succeeds is good or whatever. And I agree with that completely. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Where's the depth?
I'm saying there is depth because it intended to be fun and succeeded. There is depth somewhere in there.
But I think that you're other anime too far to try to find depth in something. Like the first thing that I thought of was Nichijou. Mm-hmm. And I can't think of it being very deep. I would say it's comedic and random and it's entertaining, but I wouldn't say it's very deep.
But see, now I think you're getting caught up where I was getting caught up earlier, which is deep has to be this almost philosophical concept, whereas deep can just be...
You don't find out about the characters. You don't flesh them out. There's no, it's not necessarily psychological depth.
No, not at all. I'm just saying, I think, Nichijou is fantastic. I think Nichijou is a great example of this. Nichijou is a successful comedy that's intent was to be nothing more than funny and enjoyable.
I mean, I just don't think that it's something... I still agree with my original... I believe I would have answered the same as you a year ago on that question, is that you don't require depth to be anything, to be good. But you seem to have switched. So I'm trying to figure out, if you could explain what you think the depth in something like Nichijou would be.
The jokes have personality to them.
Right. With that, the anime where Jesus and Buddha...
10 young men.
That's, a comedy that... I guess actually there is a lot of depth in there.
I would say there's a lot more depth to that one because you can tell how much the director spent time researching the religions.
And it's so funny. Anyone who hasn't seen that should see that.
Right, but I think if you can make like a 5-minute gag about there's a gag in Nichijou where a police officer is going around and he has to do these routine bag checks for like a criminal activity, like a theft in the area, and the girl has like hentai manga in her purse, and so right away she's just like, take me in. She just puts out her hands and like gives up. And there's like a 10-minute gag all about, her refusing to, let the police officer search her bag. And it ends up with her like knocking out the police officer and like the passerbys and all these people that are just like, that level of comedy, I mean, in my opinion, is deep. Whereas I'm trying to think of a bad example of a comedy, of course... I can't.
Well, like Prison School, again, is just something that's like...
No, Prison School is exceptionally deep. I will not back down on that. Prison School is another example of something that takes something like a concept like Shimonetta and excels at sort of twisting this perception of ecchi anime. It's not just I trip and fall into a girl's boobs. It's I fall into a girl's boobs, and 10 episodes later that comes back to bite me.
Yeah.
It all builds on itself.
Okay, yeah. And I would actually, oddly enough, I never thought I'd come to the defense of fucking Prison School, but I would agree that there's a lot of depth to be found in that.
So I think maybe the problem we're having right now, in order to try to close this up, is that we're generalizing. We're trying to think of. And maybe that's what I was getting at the first place. I'm trying to generalize what makes something deep is that it is not superficial. And superficial anime consists of nothing but cliches and tropes. And I think those are extremely evident in particular cases. And we have to look at very specific anime one by one, which is actually why we talk about anime as we're watching them. It's why we will give our first impressions on these new anime that come out. And that's why we talk. This is the purpose of talking about anime. Anime revolves around having taste. You know, taste will always be the core of anime discussion. Whether something is good or bad, whether something is deep or not, whether something is superficial or filled with cliches, that's what we always come back to. Let's not fall victim to mediocre anime. Don't try to convince yourself something is better than it actually is just because you don't want to admit that it wasted your time and tricked you into some degree of emotional investment. Have fun watching anime. Don't feel ashamed of what you like. Acknowledge a show's faults and categorize it as a guilty pleasure, but never stop thinking critically. Never be content with the series being just okay.
I find it a little ironic that you will say don't settle for okay when there are plenty of shows that I'll be like, oh, how's this? I'd be like, oh, it's awful, but I'm gonna finish it.
But that's me personally because I need to do this. Shut up. But see, the thing is, I will watch it, but I'm not okay with it. I'm not like
Just sitting on the screen like, God.
I think that's my point. I will watch something and not be okay with it. Whereas a lot of people watch it and they're like, you know, it wasn't that bad. I don't try to convince myself most of the time.
They try to rationalize.
I try to convince myself maybe as I'm watching something that it might not be as bad, you know, in the end. But, you know, I was extremely disappointed with a lot of stuff, which we'll talk about in a minute. But no. Don't. We're not going to end this with your smug look. What? Do you disagree?
I just, like, I don't think that, like, if you truly were not okay with it, I would figure you would stop watching it.
No, not Kyle. He watches everything. It's like a commitment.
Hey,
It's like
Sam,
massive.
if you didn't like something, what would you do? Would you
Yeah.
continue watching or would you stop watching?
Yeah, but I'm not like the what's your new like Twitter handle?
King of
The best anime boy.
I'm not the best anime boy. Okay.
I live my life to watch anime. It's probably not a good thing.
I mean, it's a maybe it's not a bad thing. It's a thing. At least you found your calling, and
Great.
it is terrible anime.
Great.
Someone's got to watch it.
Someone's
I
got to
wish
watch
anyone
it.
loved me as much as
that's
you
a good
love
point.
anime.
Someone's got to watch it. I wish someone loved me as much as I loved anime.
Moving on.
Let's move on to questions. So,
What's your favorite color, Sam?
no,
Green, but every now and then it goes to orange. Also, purple's been always there for me. So like it's this weird toss up between green and orange
You
and
know,
purple.
strangely, those are probably the three ugliest colors to put together.
I don't like green.
Green and purple look good together. You don't like green? That poster's green.
Do you hate that poster?
No?
Got him.
Yeah.
Oh no! I've been wrong this whole time. All right. I just posted my review as Gaudy Pineapple, but I figured I should email my question. I actually didn't see your review come through, but iTunes is dumb, but I appreciate the sentiment anyways. And the question asker says, and if you're looking for a drink recommendation, you should try making some alcoholic Mayan mochas. We'll look into
sure,
that.
whatever. Let's do it.
So I'm going to read through the entire thing and then we'll go back and answer it. So, question 1. So I hadn't seen much anime before your show, but Oran Host Club was one of the 8 or so I had seen. I adore that show, but haven't noticed it mentioned. Any love or hate for the show? Question 2. For you guys personally, would you watch less anime if it didn't have any fan service? Do you think animators include it because they have to or because they enjoy drawing it? Kyle said that shows are better without gratuitous fan service, but it sounds like he smiles a lot when talking about fan service in whatever shows he is currently watching. The way y'all have talked about it makes it seem like a large majority of anime watchers keep up with ongoing anime primarily because of fan service. Now, I'm new to the anime scene, but over the last 3 weeks, I have binge watched about 20 different series, mostly on y'all's recommendation, and I feel like the best I have seen are the ones that respect the story enough to avoid any fan service tropes, busty character designs not included. For me, Konosuba is basically as pervy as a show can get while still being enjoyable.
Whoa, now.
As pervy as a show can get while still being enjoyable.
I love this guy.
And much of that show's blue
Take a drink
humor.
for the waifu material on the screen.
He's
by the
waifu
way.
material.
This is a mess. And much of that show's blue humor is pretty good. But are things like the upskirt shots in the first episode really necessary? Would Steins Gate, Your Lie in April, Champloo, Mob Psycho, Cowboy Bebop, My Love Story, or FMAB be improved with upskirt shots? Absolutely not, for me at least. Regular use of that sort of thing seems to ruin a decent show. I mean, that's what the subgenre of animes y'all talk about are for, right? Sorry for the essay, stay drunk, and thanks for the anime, Wesley.
Stay drunk.
Wesley,
My man.
My man, thank you for saying what I've been saying for so long. Someone finally agrees with me because everyone else on this podcast disagrees with me. I really don't like unnecessary fan service. I think it's bullshit in regards to the question of do animators do it because they like to draw it.
Hold up.
Draw it.
Let's answer things in order.
I really don't want to.
Or in Host Club.
Let
Sam.
me. You don't have to answer this. I'm just going to quickly get my thoughts out on it. Please contain your excitement. Okay? So, in regards to Oran High School Host Club, no love or hate, only prejudice. Considering its popularity, I have no doubt in my mind that Host Club is probably great. However,
You haven't watched it.
I've never watched it because my perception of the show has been warped due to what I've seen at conventions. I unjustly associate Host Club with weeaboo culture as a result of only knowing about the show entirely through its fan base. My perception of the anime is unfair, ignorant, and should not be taken seriously, but has resulted in an aversion towards the show without even knowing really what it's about. To put it simply, one time I saw someone cosplaying as a character from Host Club, heard them use the term glomp, and thought to myself, that anime is probably not for me.
What do I? You
What's
know what?
glomp? I want to know what glomp is.
I was gonna ask, and then I decided not to.
I really
ask.
want to know what glomp is.
Glomp is just a vocalization of hug. You know, it's the sound a hug makes, probably.
No, it doesn't.
Not according to people who watch
All right.
Host Club.
So it's like yelling smooch.
It's actually
Smooch,
chew.
That's a thing?
Yeah.
Chew.
Chew. It's the sound a kiss makes.
I didn't know that was a thing.
Chew.
Yeah, CHU. Chew.
Okay.
So I'm sorry I don't have anything to say on it aside from the fact that I am, ignorant regarding it.
That's how I feel about Rick and Morty.
Oh, really?
That's an anime, right?
It's my favorite anime. All right. So question 2. So let's start one by one. For you guys personally, would you watch less anime if it didn't have any fan service?
No, I'd watch more of it if it didn't have any fan service. I already try to not watch anime that are overly fan servicey. If there is an upskirt shot or just tits
Sam
out for no
turns
reason.
it off and breaks his remote.
Yeah, or like someone walking in on someone in the shower for no fucking reason at all. I'm probably not going to like or watch that anime. I like boobs, but they have to be there for a reason.
So for me, yes, but only because without fan service, there would be less anime to watch.
I feel like that's a cop-out answer, but I'll take it.
But I have more to say on it. But the second part says, do you think animators include it just because they have to or because they enjoy drawing it?
They have to.
Have to.
They have
Yeah,
to.
I
They have
mean,
to.
the inclusion of fan services isn't really up to the animator, but the level of detail put into the service scenes, are so thorough that I think it's safe to assume a fair amount of animators enjoy drawing sexy scenes.
Oh yeah, I'm sure some animators like drawing it, but ultimately the animator
There's got to be one
doesn't really
Sam.
decide what's going to be.
There's
in
like a
the-
Sam in the animated thing, like, God damn it, another tit scene.
All right, next part. Kyle said that fan service shows are better without gratuitous fan service, but it sounds like he smiles a lot when talking about the service in whatever shows he's currently watching.
He does. He loves it.
I think Kyle has
I don't know
like
anyone
a
who
big
likes it more.
dissection. Like, so he likes his shows that are deep and, meaningful to have nudity in it that makes sense. Like Perfect Blue would be an example, right? It's like psychological, it's got a lot going on. It has some nudity, but it doesn't come off as sexy. And he really enjoys that. And if it had some sort of gratuitous like bath scene in it, it would turn him off of it. But then he watches something like Sin, which is like literally just tits in your face the entire time. And he understands that is the purpose that the anime has set out.
And
it executes
in
properly.
Kyle's defense, like we said, he watches a lot of shit that's terrible for no reason other than the fact that he feels he has to watch it. That is his life's purpose. So when you're going through a whole pile of garbage every now and then,
This is
seeing
sounding
a tit,
a lot like an insult.
seeing a tit here or there probably isn't the worst thing. So I can see why you're like, oh, thank God, a break.
So first of all, I think it is absolutely hilarious that you can tell I'm smiling when talking about fan service. So you see, I am a complex individual. Gratuitous fan service is a practice used to cover up the fact that an anime sucks. It adds nothing to the story. However, I enjoy nudity and sexuality in anime when it is purposeful, as we've talked about. It could be to
You like
characterize
it when it's
someone.
not purposeful too.
I do, but hold on. It could be used to characterize someone as prideful, like Satsuki from Kill la Kill, or emotionless, like Rei from Evangelion.
Or naked.
It could be used
Like a naked anime girl
for
whose name
comedy,
I forgot.
or to build tension, or anything In spite of all this, there's a part of me that just thinks anime girls are really hot, and it makes me happy to watch the countless series that exist to do nothing more than place them in sexual scenarios. I like to watch sexy things, and then I like to watch things that are purposeful, and there's a time and a place for both, and you can have...
Your cake and eat it too.
You can have your cake and eat it too.
You can, yeah.
Okay, so here's the deal. The new anime season has started, and because a lot of people are interested in hearing about what's worth watching, but may not listen to the podcast, I decided to do a first impressions video. You've already should have seen it by now. In addition to that, the channel name, on YouTube specifically, has been changed from The Weeabooze to Secret Otaku because it makes a little bit more sense, because we're going to be uploading more stuff than just the podcast on the Weeabooze YouTube channel specifically. I have my first impressions video. I have a video going up in November for everyone. It's exclusive to patrons right now. Eventually, we're going to be doing another sort of project together.
Are we doing the cooking show?
Oh, yeah, the cooking show.
Sweet.
We did like a Let's Play. So we have a lot of things under what we do together and then what I do alone, and we needed to categorize it. So I just wanted to move the channel from The Weeabooze to Secret Otaku as this all-encompassing channel.
What's that show that's about food that's really popular?
Food Wars?
Shokugeki no Soma, which is also Food
It'd be
Wars.
funny if we all had to pick one thing from that show and cook it.
It sure would. I think the podcast is coming out after the first impressions video, so if you're interested in that, go watch that on YouTube, but it will also be on iTunes without visuals if you are into that. But
Or if you're blind.
For now, there are just a few anime from last season I'd like to give my final thoughts on. There are a lot of shows that aren't even worth my time to criticize, which is part of the reason I wanted to revisit tonight's topic on depth. I've already said all I can say regarding most of the anime from last season, or I have intentionally stopped talking about them entirely, like Bahamut. So, recreators. I still think the anime's meta was more interesting than the plot. I like what the show had to say, and the concept of audience acceptance was really interesting, but I felt like it was conveyed poorly. Most of the show's major plot points relied on the magical system that dictated the rules of the world, yet it was the most prominent aspect of the anime that continually irritated my suspension of disbelief. My main concern with the finale was the aftermath. Even though I personally wasn't thrilled with the train station scene at the end, it makes sense. I get it. I can accept it. But after everything was said and done, what was really the point in the characters returning to their respective worlds? It's not like their story ceased to exist after they were brought to reality. They aren't returning anywhere. They're simply ceasing to exist in reality. I felt like the use of a portal was a convenient and happy method to have everyone disappear. If recreators wanted to be faithful to the audience acceptance mechanic it used, I think it would have been more interesting if these anime characters were stuck on Earth until their creation was no longer relevant in society. Overall, I felt like there was a lack of repercussions for a lot of the events, and the story didn't focus on what I considered to be some of the most interesting facets. Good ideas, average execution. Koitu Uso. Even though it was my guilty pleasure of the season, I allowed myself to get invested in it, and unsurprisingly was left extremely disappointed. I have no intellectual comments for the anime. The ending was straight up dumb. The assigned couple spent one last night together because they found a way to have the government separate them, and then suddenly, harem ending with no clear resolution whatsoever. All we know is that the boy loves both girls, and both girls love him, and if we want to know more, you have to read the manga. Kakegurui wasn't terribly disappointing, but thoroughly underwhelming. For a show about taking risk, the ending felt understandably indecisive. They clearly don't know if they'll be getting a season 2, so they wrapped up the story in an uneventful and ambiguous way. As much as I want to like this show, as much as I enjoyed the show as it was airing, it's something I will probably forget about, but would happily watch a season 2. Made in Abyss had its fair share of problems. It had some thoroughly uninteresting episodes, unnecessary and poor use of sexual humor involving children, and arguable pacing issues, but I think it won the not-so-difficult contest of anime of the season. The last few episodes were fantastic. They represented what I originally wanted the anime to be. They were dark and added a much-needed quality of urgency to the plot. The very brief relationship between Mitty and the bunny girl was told efficiently and made me care about them far more quickly than the main characters. I didn't care about the characters until the end, which isn't good, but the series got there eventually. It's just unfortunate that when I finally start caring, it's over. I am left with an incomplete story, and I don't have time to read the manga with all the anime I'm watching. Ballroom, which is still ongoing, is heavily flawed, yet I don't think it is bad. I feel like most of its flaws are a result of it being poorly adapted. I can't say this with much merit since I actually haven't seen the source material, but I have seen enough adaptations to safely assume it's the type of adaptation where it's essentially colored manga panels. It's just existing as an anime, not utilizing the fact that it's an anime. I love the new characters and the direction it's heading in, though. And that's all I have to say, unless you guys have any anime that you've been watching that you want to talk about. Did you finish Boku no Hero? Do you want to talk about Boku no Hero? Did you watch anything from the new season? That's a no.
New season? No. I did finish Boku no Hero. Everyone finished Boku no Hero, right?
Yep.
Hunter's lying.
Okay, I didn't finish it, but spoil away. Because I had my chance. And you know what I did? I rewatched One Punch Man, okay? I'm sorry.
The ending was good. I liked it. I enjoyed it.
It's not really an ending.
Yeah, I mean...
It's getting a season 3, which is good. Hooray.
When is season 3?
Not announced yet.
I'd like it soon.
Let's wrap up.
Yes, that's me.
If you have any questions or suggestions for episode topics, please send us as many as you would like. You can send them to myself at Secret Otaku on Tumblr, email us at theweeabooze@gmail.com, or just leave a comment wherever you're listening. Join us on Twitch for when we record live on Fridays around the middle of each month, and join us on our Discord so you can talk to us whenever you would like. Also, consider supporting us on Patreon or leaving us an iTunes review if you like what we do. And more than anything, please share the podcast because word of mouth is pretty much the only way we get new listeners. In fact, I was sort of browsing the anime subreddit not too long ago and stumbled across a comment of someone actually recommending our podcast. So shout out to Dojin something 33. Thank you for, the compliments and recommendation. So I forgot your actual username. We want to thank Hentai Dude for our intro music and Kuwagata for our outro music. And like always, get drunk.
Anime.
And get drunk in anime.
Get drunk anime.
Get drunk.
See you guys next time.
Peace.
Can catch me smoking a sour off the coast of Okinawa. Feeling so high like I'm Ho in that tower. Take a flight on some shit. Got my dogs riding beside me, blazing hot. That's kamikaze. Say goodbye, don't be mad, I'm lit. Catch me smoking a sour off the coast of Okinawa. Feeling so high like I'm Ho in that tower. Take a flight on some shit. Got my dogs riding beside me, blazing hot. That's kamikaze. Say goodbye, don't be mad, I'm lit.